Kathy here. Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining me this evening. I'm having a look today at positronics, the exploration of how the positron behaves in our universe when it appears, what happens to it and what happens to the things that have happened from its happening, if you like, if you understand what I mean. I'm sure you do. Okay, this little diagram here is probably by now a bit familiar to you if you've been seeing my videos previously. It's how I draw annihilation. Annihilation being a big feature of the quantum world in terms of how particles interact with each other. In the experiments like the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, and anything really that's a big spinning set of magnets around which protons are smashed together, is studying annihilation, looking at it in as much depth as the scientific instruments can afford, which is only as far as really the impact and resulting shards that are ejected from an annihilation process can be studied. It's very, very difficult because they're very, very small, and obviously being very, very small, you can't see them directly, so all that can be gained from the data is a series of tracks that these particles that are thrown off by annihilation will create. So what are these tracks doing is kind of the question here. This couple of parallel-ish waves are doing what appears to happen in the annihilation process, i.e. one set of waves is going forward in time and the other series is going backwards in time. So whichever way you want to look at it, that's how things are seen to be happening. And this whole process of forwards, backwards in time motion is a really hot topic of contention out there in the scientific community at the moment. It seems that retrocausality itself has been largely accepted as a principle, in that there is a reversal of the time flow from the one we experience. It's not like it appears to be. What we're experiencing essentially is entropy. So we're sort of galloping along on an entropic path, following one system of time waves, those that travel from the present into the future. So we're not. It's difficult to describe, but I think you get the picture, that we're galloping along in one direction while time is actually moving in both. This is a representation of a Feynmans diagram describing what happens in a classic annihilation process, which involves the positron, which we're looking at today. Beloved thing, positively charged. Yay, yippee. Here they are, these two particles. So there's our familiar electron, negatively charged, and it's T+. It's positive in its time travel. It's going in the same direction that our perception is going in. So we're going along our timeline with our electrons, the same time flow. Here's the positron coming in on the reverse time flow. So it's effectively going backwards in time, backwards from the way we perceive time to flow. So there's this sort of juxtaposition of time symmetry coming together, and hardly surprisingly creating a great deal of energy when it does. There's an awful lot of energy in an annihilation, but it's very, very small. What it produces is a photon for a moment. So these two come together, bang, they annihilate, and here's a photon produced. Poof! That doesn't last very long, that photon. It decays pretty quickly, and when it does, it turns into a quark, and an antiquark with its little glue on here, just because that's accurate, apparently. The antiquark is doing exactly the same as the positron. It's travelling backwards in time, while the quark, the familiar particle that we're partly composed of, is travelling forwards in time. So here we are, merrily galloping on with our quarks going in the same trajectory as our quarks are and our electrons. But the antiquark and the positron, whilst they're travelling in the opposite direction, doesn't mean to say that they don't have any impact on us. Doesn't mean at all that they have no part to play in our reality and the construct of it, and even our experience of it, possibly. And the reason I say that is that if we are looking at a process which produces a particle of light, we have to ask, what's the time frame of that photon when it exists? Is it going forwards and backwards in time at the same time? Is it effectively being its own antiparticle? So do we have a photon being an antiphoton? Or is it a shadow version of itself? Is it a Majorana effect in terms of what it's actually doing here? We don't actually know the answers to those questions, but we can kind of experience something of this positronic input. In our own energy system, we are obviously working with electrons, quarks, mesons and leptons and bosons of all descriptions that partake of the chemistry of our own body and what happens within it. And we know from experience that when we're feeling good about stuff, we have more energy. And when we have more energy, we tend to feel good about stuff. So it's a kind of a symbiosis, a synergy, if you like, between our energy and the way we feel. So, bearing in mind that this annihilation process doesn't have to happen in a Large Hadron Collider or in a supernova or some other exotic space-time application. It's a process that can very easily happen anywhere at any time, doesn't have any limits to where it can actually occur. And that brings us really to question how much of this information is directly relevant to us. I pulled a piece of paper, when Owl is with me here, which he often is, I use newspaper to catch owl poo, as you can see. And this sheet is written by Dr. Michael Mosley. Now, I want to read a little section of it, just a little one. The title is Why the Power of Your Mind Can Be as Potent as Any Pill. So what's going on, says the article, after some considerable foreplay on all this. Dr. Howick is keen to point out that people respond to the placebo effect not because they are gullible or making up symptoms. In fact, the main characteristic of people who respond to placebos is that they're open to new experiences, inverted commas. And it goes deeper than that. We know that if you take a placebo and expect a positive outcome, this causes your body to release morphine-like substances, natural opioids. Now, German researchers have also found that people who respond best to a placebo produce higher levels of certain proteins in the blood, some of which are known to help control inflammation. Chronic inflammation, where the immune system is in a state of constant high alert, is not only linked to conditions such as heart disease and cancer, but also increases chronic pain. Now obviously that's an article in a standard British tabloid newspaper, so it's not going to be going into detail about positrons and annihilation and retrocausality and that sort of stuff. That's your territory. That's where you and I would like to kind of meet on some term of ground. Sorry, just dressing myself again. It's not that I've done anything bad, it's just this top slips. But nevertheless, even though the good Dr. Michael Mosley and the Dr. Howick that he was quoting don't go into detail about that side of things, there is clearly some kind of quantum mechanical process happening within us, within our physical system, that produces these effects. And the question is, does that have something to do with positrons? Now, I'd love you to be able to go away and have a think about it, do some research of your own, come up with some ideas, because this is the kind of stuff that we love to talk about in the Quantumology group on Facebook and in the website context as well. Hey, come and visit us, quantumology.org and .net, we're all over there as well. And follow us on Twitter, and why not get the book? Hey, acquire the book. It's the Crossing of the Bridge. It was published a while ago now, but there was a waiting list for it in the New York Central Library, so somebody liked it. Anyway, meanwhile, have fun. 2021 has just landed, so let's see where it takes us. Take care. Bye.